The rain hammered against the windshield of Detective Marcus Chin's patrol car as he navigated the winding mountain road. Lightning split the darkness, illuminating the twisted pines that lined the narrow asphalt. He'd been driving for 3 hours, following up on a report from a hiker who claimed to have seen something disturbing near the old Blackwood mine. Most likely another false alarm, but protocol demanded investigation. His radio crackled with static. The storm was interfering with communications, leaving him effectively cut off from the outside world. Marcus adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and pressed forward through the deluge. 23 years on the force had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about this night felt different. Wrong. The headlights caught a flash of movement ahead. Marcus slowed the vehicle, squinting through the rain-streaked glass. There, barely visible through the downpour, stood a figure on the side of the road. He pulled over and grabbed his flashlight, stepping out into the storm. The cold rain immediately soaked through his jacket as he approached. The beam of his flashlight revealed a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, standing motionless in the storm. She wore a simple white dress that clung to her thin frame, and her long dark hair hung in wet strands around her shoulders. But what made Marcus's blood run cold was the heavy chain wrapped around her ankle, its other end disappearing into the darkness of the forest. She was smiling. Not the vacant smile of someone in shock, but a genuine, almost serene expression that seemed completely at odds with her circumstances. Her eyes, a striking green color, met his with an intelligence that was immediately apparent despite her bedraggled appearance. "Miss, are you all right?" Marcus called out, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. The situation screamed danger, but the woman showed no signs of distress. "I believe I am now," she replied, her voice clear and articulate despite the storm. "Though I must admit, I'm not entirely certain how I came to be here." Marcus approached cautiously, his flashlight beam revealing more of the chain. It was heavy-duty steel, the kind used in industrial applications, and it had been secured around her ankle with a padlock. "What's your name? Who did this to you?" The woman tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question from multiple angles. "I don't know," she said simply. "I remember waking up here perhaps an hour ago, though my sense of time may be imprecise given the circumstances. The chain was already in place, and I have no recollection of how it came to be there or who might have put it there." "You don't remember anything? Your name, where you're from?" "Nothing prior to awakening in this location." She gestured to the forest around them with a fluid motion. "However, I can tell you that this chain is made of grade 80 steel, likely with a working load limit of approximately 3,000 pounds. The lock is a Master Lock Model 6230, which uses a 5-pin tumbler system. The trees surrounding us are primarily Douglas fir and western hemlock, suggesting we're at an elevation of roughly 2,000 feet in what I would estimate to be the Cascade Range." Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process the contradiction between her apparent expertise and claimed amnesia. "How do you know all that?" "I'm not certain. The information simply seems to be there when I need it." She looked down at the chain around her ankle with curiosity rather than fear. "It's quite fascinating, actually. I can recall extensive technical knowledge, mathematical principles, even complex scientific theories, but I cannot remember my own name or how I learned these things." Lightning flashed again, and Marcus made a decision. "We need to get you out of this storm. Let me see if I can do something about that chain." He examined the lock with his flashlight while the woman watched with interest. "The lock mechanism appears to be in good condition," she observed. "However, if you have a tension wrench and a rake pick, I believe I could manipulate the pins sufficiently to—" "You know how to pick locks?" "Apparently so, though I couldn't tell you where I learned the skill." Her smile widened slightly. "My mind seems to be a repository of knowledge without context, rather like a library where someone has removed all the catalog cards." Marcus radioed for backup and a locksmith, but received only static in response. The storm was getting worse, and they were too far from town for reliable communication. He returned to his patrol car and retrieved a bolt cutter from the trunk. "This might hurt," he warned as he positioned the tool around one of the chain links. "Physical discomfort is merely a neurological response to stimuli," she replied matter-of-factly. "I can compartmentalize the sensation." The bolt cutter snapped through the steel with a sharp crack. The woman flexed her ankle, examining the remaining portion of chain still locked around it. "Much better. Though I suspect this jewelry wasn't chosen for aesthetic purposes." Marcus helped her into the passenger seat of his patrol car, cranking up the heat. As she warmed up, he studied her profile in the dashboard light. Despite her ordeal, she seemed remarkably composed, almost analytical about her situation. "Do you have any idea why someone might have done this to you?" he asked as they began the drive back toward town. Several possibilities come to mind, she replied, staring out at the storm. Kidnapping for ransom, though that would require the perpetrator to know my identity, which I currently do not. Human trafficking, though my age and the elaborate nature of the restraint suggest otherwise. Perhaps I was being held for some specific purpose related to my apparent intellectual capabilities. What makes you think you have special intellectual capabilities? She turned to look at him, and Marcus was struck again by the depth of intelligence in her eyes. I've been awake for approximately 90 minutes, and in that time I've performed several calculations in my head. Based on the rainfall rate, wind patterns, and barometric pressure indicators, I can predict that this storm will pass in roughly 47 minutes. I've also determined that your patrol car needs new brake pads based on the subtle vibration in the steering wheel when you decelerate, and I've memorized the license plate numbers of the 3 vehicles we've passed, along with their approximate speeds and directions of travel. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. That's not normal. No, I don't believe it is. Which raises the question of whether my intellectual capacity is natural or artificially enhanced. She paused, considering. There are pharmaceutical compounds that can temporarily boost cognitive function, though the side effects typically include memory impairment. Perhaps that explains my current condition. They drove in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the drumming of rain and the rhythmic sweep of windshield wipers. Marcus found himself stealing glances at his passenger, trying to reconcile her extraordinary claims with her appearance. She looked like any other young woman, albeit one who had been through a traumatic experience. "What's the first thing you remember?" he asked, opening my eyes and seeing the forest canopy above me. The rain was just beginning, and I could smell ozone in the air from the approaching electrical activity. I sat up and discovered the chain, which I found curious rather than alarming. I spent some time examining the lock mechanism and calculating possible escape scenarios before you arrived. You weren't afraid? Fear is an emotional response to perceived danger. While my situation was clearly abnormal, I felt no immediate threat. The chain restricted my movement but didn't cause harm, and I was confident that someone would eventually discover me. She smiled again, that same serene expression that seemed so out of place. I was correct in that assessment. As they descended toward the valley where the town lay, Marcus's radio finally crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice was urgent. "All units, we have a situation at the university. Break-in at the research facility. Suspects may still be on scene." Marcus grabbed the radio. "This is Unit 7. I'm 20 minutes out with a possible related incident. Request backup at my location." "Unit 7. What's your status?" "I've got a potential kidnapping victim. Young female. Appears to have been held against her while near the Blackwood mine area. She's safe but has no memory of recent events." The woman beside him raised an eyebrow. "University research facility? That's interesting. What type of research?" "How would I know?" Marcus replied, but something in her tone made him uneasy. "The timing seems coincidental. A break-in at a research facility on the same night I'm discovered chained in the forest with enhanced cognitive abilities and selective amnesia." She tapped her temple with one finger. "Perhaps I wasn't kidnapped. Perhaps I escaped." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You think you were part of some kind of experiment?" It would explain the apparent enhancement of my intellectual capabilities, the memory loss, and the extreme measures taken to restrain me. If I were a test subject who had somehow broken free, the researchers would need to contain me before I could expose their activities. Marcus pressed harder on the accelerator. The university was a prestigious institution known for its advanced research programs, but rumors had circulated for years about classified government contracts and questionable ethical standards. If this woman was connected to illegal human experimentation, the situation was far more serious than a simple kidnapping. "Do you remember anything about a laboratory? Medical procedures? Other people in similar situations?" She closed her eyes, concentrating. "There are fragments. Bright lights. The sound of machinery. Voices discussing neural pathways and cognitive enhancement protocols. But it's like trying to remember a dream. The harder I focus, the more it slips away. That could be intentional. Memory suppression drugs. Precisely what I was thinking. Though if that's the case, the effects may be temporary. My recall might improve as the compounds metabolize." They reached the outskirts of town as the storm began to subside, just as the woman had predicted. Marcus could see the university campus in the distance, its modern buildings illuminated by security lights. Several police vehicles were already on scene, their red and blue strobes painting the wet pavement in alternating colors. I should take you to the hospital first, Marcus said. Get you checked out. Make sure you're not injured. I would prefer to accompany you to the research facility, she replied. If my suspicions are correct, I may be able to provide valuable information about what occurred there. It's a crime scene. I can't just. Detective Chin. The use of his name stopped him cold. He hadn't told her his name, and his badge was hidden beneath his jacket. How did you know that? She looked genuinely puzzled. I'm not certain. It simply came to me when I needed it, like the other information. Perhaps I overheard it on your radio communications. Marcus reviewed the radio conversations in his mind. His name hadn't been mentioned. A new possibility occurred to him, one that made his skin crawl. What if you're not just a victim? What if you're connected to the people who broke into the facility? An intriguing hypothesis. Though if I were a criminal, would I have remained chained in the forest waiting to be discovered? It would have been more logical to flee the area entirely. Unless the chain wasn't put there by your captors. Unless you put it there yourself to create a cover story. She considered this with the same analytical detachment she'd shown everything else. That would require remarkable foresight and planning. I would have needed to anticipate being discovered, calculate the optimal location and timing, and sacrifice my own freedom to maintain the deception. While not impossible, it seems unnecessarily complex. Marcus pulled into the university parking lot, his mind racing. The woman beside him was either an innocent victim of horrific crimes or a brilliant manipulator playing an elaborate game. Her intelligence was undeniable, but intelligence could be used for good or evil. Detective Sarah Walsh approached the patrol car as they parked. She was Marcus's partner of 5 years, a sharp investigator with an instinct for reading people. Her expression was grim as she leaned down to the driver's window. What VE you got, Marcus? Possible connection to your break-in. Found her chained up near Blackwood Mine, claims to have no memory but demonstrates extraordinary intellectual abilities. Sarah's eyes shifted to the passenger seat, taking in the woman's appearance. What's your name, miss? I don't remember, the woman replied. Though I can tell you that your weapon is a Glock 22, you're left-handed despite wearing your holster on your right side, and you've been working this case for approximately 4 hours based on the coffee stains on your jacket and the pattern of wear on your shoes. Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon. How could you possibly know that? Observation and deduction. Your stance favors your left side, but you've trained yourself to draw with your right hand for tactical advantage. The coffee stains are consistent with spillage that occurs during extended periods of stress, and the scuff marks on your shoes indicate rapid movement over concrete surfaces, likely within the past few hours. Jesus, Sarah muttered. What kind of training produces that level of awareness? Military intelligence, perhaps. Or specialized law enforcement. Possibly academic research into cognitive enhancement. The woman's smile never wavered. I seem to have access to knowledge from multiple disciplines, though I cannot recall acquiring any of it. Marcus filled Sarah in on the details of his discovery while the woman sat quietly, apparently listening to everything while simultaneously observing their surroundings with systematic precision. Her eyes moved in patterns, cataloging details with mechanical efficiency. The research facility was broken into around midnight, Sarah explained. Someone with extensive knowledge of the security systems bypassed multiple layers of protection to access the neuroscience lab. They took files, computer equipment, and several vials of experimental compounds. What kind of compounds? The woman asked. That's classified information, Sarah replied sharply. Cognitive enhancers, most likely. Nootropics designed to boost memory, processing speed, and analytical capabilities. The theft would make sense if someone wanted to cover their tracks after using human test subjects. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. The woman's insights were disturbingly accurate, but her knowledge could come from either being a victim or a perpetrator. We need to take you in for questioning, Sarah said. This is a serious federal investigation. Of course. Though I should mention that I've been monitoring your radio communications, and I believe you have approximately 15 minutes before the real perpetrators complete their escape plan. What are you talking about? Marcus demanded. The break-in at the university was a diversion. While your resources are focused here, the actual objective is being accomplished elsewhere. The pattern of the theft, the timing, the specific materials taken, it's all designed to draw attention away from the primary target. Which is what? The off-site storage facility where the most sensitive research data is kept. Building 47 on Industrial Drive, approximately 2 miles from here. If I'm correct, they're currently in the process of destroying evidence that could expose years of illegal human experimentation. Sarah grabbed her radio. All units, we need backup at Building 47, industrial drive. Possible break-in in progress. The response was immediate. Units were dispatched, but it would take time to coordinate the response. Time that might allow crucial evidence to be destroyed. How do you know about Building 47? Marcus asked. I'm not certain. The information seems to be surfacing as we discuss the situation. Perhaps my memory is returning in fragments, triggered by relevant stimuli. Or perhaps you're one of the people we're looking for, Sarah said coldly. That remains a possibility. Though if I were guilty, would I be directing you toward evidence of my own crimes? It was a valid point, but Marcus had learned not to trust anything at face value. The woman's extraordinary abilities made her either an invaluable witness or an extremely dangerous suspect. Possibly both. They drove toward Building 47 with sirens wailing, the woman providing a running commentary on optimal routes and tactical considerations. Her knowledge of the area was extensive, including details about building layouts and security systems that weren't publicly available. There, she said as they approached the industrial complex. Third building from the left. The loading dock will be the most vulnerable entry point, but they'll have posted a lookout on the roof. Marcus could see figures moving near the building, confirming her prediction. How did you know that? Standard operational procedure for this type of mission. I seem to have extensive knowledge of surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques, though I cannot recall where I learned them. The next few minutes were a blur of coordinated police activity. The suspects were apprehended before they could complete the destruction of evidence, and the building was secured. Inside, investigators found extensive files documenting illegal human experimentation, including detailed records of cognitive enhancement procedures performed on unwilling subjects. As dawn broke over the city, Marcus found himself sitting across from the mysterious woman in an interview room. She had remained cooperative throughout the night, providing insights that proved crucial to the investigation, but questions remained about her true identity and role in the events. The files we recovered contain records of 12 test subjects, he told her. All were reported missing over the past 2 years. We're working to identify them, but the documentation uses only numerical designations. Subject 13, she said quietly. What? That's who I am. Subject 13. The memories are returning slowly, but I remember being taken from a homeless shelter 6 months ago. They told me I was volunteering for a medical study that would help people with cognitive disabilities. Marcus felt a wave of relief mixed with anger. She was a victim, not a perpetrator. But the scope of what had been done to her was staggering. The cognitive enhancements, are they permanent? I don't know. The researchers were still refining the process. Some subjects experienced permanent changes, while others reverted to baseline capabilities within weeks. She looked directly at him, and for the first time, he saw vulnerability beneath her analytical exterior. I'm not sure I want to remember everything they did to me. You don't have to face this alone. We'll make sure you get the help you need. She smiled, and this time it wasn't the serene expression he'd grown accustomed to. It was genuinely grateful, touched with hope. Detective Chin, may I ask you something? Of course. When you found me in the rain, chained and smiling, what made you stop to help rather than assume I was dangerous? Marcus considered the question. Instinct, I guess. Despite everything that seemed wrong about the situation, I could see that you needed help. Thank you for trusting that instinct. Without your intervention, the evidence would have been destroyed, and the other victims would never have received justice. As the investigation continued over the following days, more details emerged about the scope of the illegal research program. The woman who had called herself Subject 13 was instrumental in helping authorities understand the complex procedures that had been performed. Her enhanced cognitive abilities gradually diminished over several weeks, but her natural intelligence remained formidable. She eventually chose the name Elena, after a mathematician whose work she had studied during her recovery. With the help of victim services and a team of specialists, she began the process of rebuilding her life and identity. The legal proceedings against her captors would take years, but she was determined to see justice done for herself and the other victims. Marcus often thought about that stormy night when he'd found her standing in the rain. The image of her smile in the midst of such dire circumstances had haunted him initially, but he came to understand it differently. It wasn't the smile of someone who had lost their mind, but of someone who had found their strength. Even in the darkest moment, chained and alone, she had maintained her humanity and her hope. The case became a landmark in the prosecution of illegal human experimentation, leading to new regulations and oversight procedures. Elena's testimony was crucial in securing convictions against the researchers and administrators who had violated the trust and dignity of vulnerable people. Years later, Marcus would receive occasional updates about Elena's progress. She had returned to school, earned advanced degrees in neuroscience and law, and dedicated her career to protecting the rights of research subjects. Her extraordinary experience had given her unique insights into both the potential and the dangers of cognitive enhancement research. The night he found her in the rain had changed both their lives in ways neither could have anticipated. It reminded Marcus why he had become a police officer in the first place, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves and to ensure that justice prevailed even in the most complex circumstances. Elena's story became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of one person's decision to help a stranger in need. Sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as routine calls on stormy nights, when the choice to stop and help can change everything.